Yo everybody, it's me, Buster Green, and welcome to my third or fourth annual Oscar video. Yay! So, quick history, I started doing these in 2022. In 22, me and my friends had a big betting pool, so I mostly talked about that before the show aired. In 23, I just did a quick Will Smith meme, because that's all anyone ever cared about to this very day. And I completely skipped making a video last year in 2024, because that was honestly one of the worst Oscars ever. So this year, I wasn't planning on doing anything, but the show was so good, I actually decided to do a quick day after react to the Oscars. It's been a minute since I last watched or fully enjoyed the show, and yeah, I think that's worth talking about. Like, really, the last couple of shows have been really rotten. Like, the only one I can even remember is, like, the one where Will Smith ruined himself forever, and then, like... yeah, this one this year was really, really good because Conan O'Brien just came out of nowhere and killed it. And yeah, doing this video is useful to me because it will give me a chance to comment on a bunch of smaller videos and movies I wanted to make stories on, but there just wasn't enough content, so now I'll just shove it all into here. So right off the bat, before I even review the show, I initially wanted to give ABC/Hulu some credit for simulcasting the show over Hulu, which is something they never did before, but they fucked it up. Yeah, anyway, because of the big switch from network TV to streaming, a lot of big events like the Oscars and the Super Bowl have really failed to keep up, but I feel like this year they finally got the memo that no one has cable anymore, and they started airing these shows on streaming. So Hulu started broadcasting the show a day late in the past couple years, but that's absolutely useless because who wants to watch a show when you already know who won? Anyway, it wasn't perfect though. Like I said, a lot of people who watched apparently had real issues getting the stream to start. And then even if it did start, the fucking broadcast ended at 10:40, right before the announcement of Best Actress and Best Picture, which I ended up having to awkwardly find out from the Indian news of all things, because there was literally no connective source aside from one in India. Anyway, onto the show. The first 2 hours and 40 minutes of I saw was actually really good. Now, it's hard to put this into words, but the last couple of Oscars have been hosted by Jimmy Kimmel, and Jimmy Kimmel has not had a sterling record as an Oscars host. Even as a late night host, he's only really gotten it in I want to say the past 5 out of the 20 years he's been doing the job. But yeah, when it comes to the Oscars, he doesn't give a shit. He phones it in. He's just kind of a body filling a hole, keeping a bench warm. If I'm being real, Kimmel is so busy running his other late night shows and other ventures that I just think he's too busy to do a decent job hosting the Oscars. Anyway, I guess Kimmel finally realized that too and got sick of doing it, and so thankfully Conan was available to take it on. And Conan O'Brien, I've always thought that Conan was the best and most diligent late night host, so he really brought his A game to this. Conan was literally the best Oscar host we've had in decades, making it the best show in decades. The last good show I can remember before this one was the one Seth MacFarlane hosted in 2011 or 2012. That one kind of felt like Family Guy, and yeah, that was the last Oscars I enjoyed until this one. The first thing I really appreciated was that Conan brought back the Oscars opening movie and the parody movie. Now, the parody movie was a pretty grotesque and hilarious scene where Demi Moore gave birth to Conan or some shit. I don't know, I haven't seen the substance yet, but it was just funny and gross and weird. The opening movie is my favorite part of the Oscars, and they used to do it all the time in the 90s, but lately, I don't know who's been hosting, but they've really been fucking up. They've been either too cheap or too long to bother with it, but in my opinion, doing that is the most important part of the show. Skipping the opening and not making the opening fun is an instant bad sign that the show is going to suck because the budget is too low or the host is too out of touch. So anyway, after that it was business as usual. There was a lot of pandering to the big films, although Conan got in so many good gags that kept it interesting. He had a skit with Bowen Yang, and he danced with freaking Deadpool. Deadpool just showed up the Oscars. I was so happy about that. The randomness of it really was good enough to shock me. I also was impressed that he made sad John Lithgow a meme instantly, and now I see people using that. I mean, it's the day after, so of course they're going to, but maybe it'll stick around. Regarding best animation and short animation, I'm sure you guys want to hear what I have to say about that. So there were some real shocking developments all through the night with indie movies crushing the big studios here, and that was also carried over into indie animation. For best animated feature, there were 5 films nominated: Inside Out 2, Memoirs of a Snail, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, Wild Robot, and Flow. I guess I'll quickly talk about all of them. I enjoyed Inside Out 2. It was a lot better than I expected it to be. I thought the idea of making the villain anxiety was a really inspired idea that sets a formula for future films in the franchise to tackle similar vague, abstract psychological issues like that. But no matter how much I did enjoy Inside Out 2, it's still a stupid kids movie, and Disney just doesn't deserve to win. They've won this award, I want to say 70% of the time they have this Oscar, and because they haven't been prioritizing animation in their past recent years, they definitely didn't deserve to win. Plus, they already have $1 billion already. They don't need any extra money. Another person pointed out to me, though, that Disney hasn't actually won in 3 years, which is about the same time frame they've been in decline. Yes, so yeah, that tracks. This movie, Memoirs of a Snail, honestly, this is my first time hearing about it. It looks kind of Tim Burton-y and kind of cool, kind of moody. Should I seek this out? Anyone heard of this before? It looks interesting. Now, Wallace and Gromit, I did see when it came out. Wallace and Gromit was pretty good, and I really respected that they did a scene with boats because water is so hard to do in stop motion, and that was a pretty high concept scene if I'm being real. But the problem is the Wallace and Gromit movies have been continuing constantly since the 80s. And when you put them all together, they just feel like they're this really, really high quality TV show that's been slowly produced over the course of 30 years. Well, I should be sympathetic about that because I'm literally doing the same thing. Right now, it's hard to say that when you're on your 8th one, it felt like, aside from the fact we waited for this one for 20 years, it just felt like another continued episode of Wallace and Gromit. The Wallace and Gromit series is almost like the MCU, but if they only release one movie every decade. And lastly, Wild Robot. I honestly thought Wild Robot had a good chance of winning. I think it was probably one of DreamWorks' best movies ever and one of the best movies of last year. And it's an honest-to-God tragedy that it's probably the last original film DreamWorks will make because of studio layoffs and restructuring in their current business model where now they're just going to sequels to make money. I was kind of optimistically hoping that they would win and it would send a message to Hollywood that, this was a good idea and shutting down creative branches of studios is a bad idea. But ultimately, I'm not surprised they lost because DreamWorks has never had really enough clout in Hollywood, and I'm surprised that a lot of people would vote against them for that reason. So ultimately, Flow won Best Animated Film. I watched Flow last week. It's a major trippy movie. It's one of those movies that I feel like if it came out here, some guy would be like, "You gotta do drugs before you watch Flow, man." Anyway, it's just this artistically cool movie without dialogue about a little cat that goes on an adventure in a boat. I'm not sure if watching it at home is the best place to watch it though, because there's a lot going on in this movie and it kind of requires absolute laser focused concentration on what's going on because it doesn't have dialogue. I'm honestly surprised this one won because there was a lot going against it. It didn't even play in cinemas in New York because no one really had faith in it. The only positive review I saw of it anywhere before tonight was from Hideo Kojima. As the animation industry has sunken deeper into this whirlwind of uncertainty, the crazy thing about this win though is that this is a completely indie film made by indie Latvian animators, and they made it in Blender, which is a free program anyone can use. So there's a lot of exciting developments about that. Maybe that's going to raise the profile of indie animation. Maybe that's going to make Blender a more serious threat in the industry. There's even parts of the film that look rough and unpolished because it was made in Blender and due to its indie background that they didn't have enough time to post-process scenes and all that. But despite all those faults, it still overcame Disney and the others, which I think really sends a message that people are just fed up with the studio-driven slop. It might be a nice sign of the times that indie animators are getting more and more powerful. I think the best effect of this is it might inspire or empower more people to at least consider indie animation more seriously. And if anything, it shows that the big studios really have lost their way in connecting to audiences. And hopefully it encourages people to give bigger indies a chance. How nuts would it be if next year the winner was Amazing Digital Circus compilation movie? Just staple the episodes together and win an Oscar, By the way, YouTube is currently estimating that in 5 years, I might have enough subs to pay for my animation studio crew to work a full-time job, and then I can create infinite animation like Hayao Miyazaki. So please sub if you haven't so far, because I'm not doing that great, and I don't want to wait 5 years to open my animation studio again. Anyway, Flow was nominated against Emilia Perez as well for Best International Film. I guess I'll talk about Emilia Perez here a sec. This is a super controversial film. It was a French film about Mexico, and then a lot of people said it was inaccurate about Mexico. It was also acknowledged as being a French film, it was entered on behalf of France. I watched this film a few days ago leading into the ceremony to try and depack the controversy around it and figure out if it was like worth mentioning or not. I'd say the film has a pretty strong first hour, but then it gets really, really weird. And I found a lot of parts of it very cringe, especially the song where they like try to badly explain a sex change operation in both English and Spanish in a way that just felt overall wrong, like even like scientifically. I do otherwise support transgender people and trans rights in Mexico, but I found parts of this film like bizarrely reminiscent of Ghost in the Shell and its soundtrack by Kenji Kawai. I'm not even sure what was up with that. Was that like intentional? Are they trying to say transgender people are cyborgs? The film was initially predicted to sweep the Oscars and get a majority of the awards, but then the film's lead actress basically tweeted some pretty horrible things about Muslims that I cannot repeat, and she torpedoed herself. And as a result, it didn't win nearly as many awards as it was predicted to win even a few weeks ago. Anyway, I think I'm overall landing that although Perez had a lot of interesting artistic points, even if it wasn't perfect, I don't know, some of the controversies around it were completely bullshit, and some of them were very real and justified. And even when it won, you could definitely see a lot of people in the audience like shrugging out loud, showing their blatant disrespect towards it, and like, it's just such a fucking mess, man. I'm just moving off of it. It won a few awards. I guess that was fair, and I'm glad it didn't like sweep the Oscars, because that would have been a shitstorm of controversy. Anyway, overall, neither of those films actually won Best International Film. The film that actually won was I'm Still Here, a film about a widow in Brazil seeking justice. Never heard of it, but maybe I should check it out. Seemingly the worst, yet slightly harmless moment of the night was an almost commercial song and dance tribute to James Bond. Now, this felt like a borderline theatrical celebration of the recent and ominous news that Amazon has just purchased the Bond franchise, and considering how much time it's soaked up on an completely irrelevant tangent because there hasn't been a Bond movie in like the past 5 years, I'm kind of saying that this felt like Amazon just bribed the Academy to do a random celebratory victory lap for bribing the Broccoli family with literally $1 billion to take over control of the franchise. Like, I'm saying this was like Amazon propaganda, and fuck that. Although, if I'm being nice though, hearing Doja Cat sing Diamonds Are Forever was kind of the highlight of the night. It was really cool, and I guess it was now my favorite thing she ever did, which makes me just wish she'd do a full, like, 70s cover song album, but she probably won't. Anyway, yeah, awesome they did that, because I really wanted to talk about the Bond repossession, but I didn't think I had enough material about it for a full video, so yeah, the Broccoli family has owned the rights to James Bond since it started being in movies, and they've definitely been dropping the ball as of late, because they're, like, in their 80s now, and the last dozen or so movies were very rightfully careful to not turn Bond into cheap, soulless slop. I think the Daniel Craig series had all the right elements together, but only a couple of movies where they actually came together perfectly. Like, in some cases like Qualm of Solace or Skyfall, you'd get really good movies, but then they didn't really work in the broader sense of a franchise telling a good continuous story or going somewhere. Like, if you think about all the Daniel Craig movies, they ultimately end with like Bond just becoming like aged up and washed up and dying. That being said, as it currently stands, I have absolutely zero confidence in Amazon Prime taking over the mantle from them. Literally, the best case scenario is they just put someone in charge who does it right, like a Kevin Feige figure who knows what he's doing. But worst case, and what everyone's expecting, is they're gonna fucking pimp James Bond out to hell and back, and we're gonna get a variety of tasteless products sent straight to Amazon Prime that are so completely worthless that it'll dilute the brand in the way that Disney ruined Star Wars and Marvel recently by just trying to pump out content for Disney Plus. Like, these big studios are so eager for short-term games on streaming that they're willing to burn down the house to pay the rent. And although I want to say Amazon doesn't care, which in some ways makes them even worse, maybe they'll make good movies, but I don't know. At the very end of the day, I expect that no matter how good the movies are or how bad they are, Amazon will definitely make in a bunch of like stupid tie-in merchandise for rich people. So look forward to your Amazon Prime endorsed James Bond blender, you know? Anyway, Amazon's Prime's offering have been basically completely rotten lately, aside from Invincible and the occasional freak Lupin movie they steal from Japan every once in a couple of years, which is a whole nother conversation. All right, let's get back in the Oscars because I went way off track. So Dune won Best Sound. Dune absolutely deserved to win Best Sound. Dune definitely had the best sound. But it also won Best VFX, which I'm a lot more divided on. Although apparently it had the nomination locked down because everyone loved the Sandworm, but I was at least happy Alien Romulus got nominated. In the VFX category, one funny thing I want to point out was that Planet of the Apes was nominated up against Better Man, which is ironic because Better Man was kind of a parody of Planet of the Apes, at least in terms of like, they had a monkey, we'll have a monkey, and therefore it's using almost the same VFX trick. It's like if the category was best VFX trick, they'd both be turning a person into a monkey twice. And in some ways, I think this kind of sabotaged the vote against both movies because you had two movies doing the exact same thing. Oh, but then again, Emilia Perez got nominated twice for Best Song, so I don't really get what determines the cutoff there, but I think there should absolutely be a rule against the same movie being nominated twice in the same category. The Memoriam was pretty rough. Morgan Freeman looked really old and sickly. I don't think as many people died as in some of the previous years, but the big ones were David Lynch, Gene Hackman, and James Earl Jones, all pretty major. Gene Hackman just died a few days ago, and his death is currently an unsolved mystery, so that's also kind of a hot topic around the city. A lot of people have some crazy theories, and it's too crazy to get into, but I hope they figure it out. A lot of people were super mad Lynch only got 3 seconds of memorial, whereas Quincy Jones got like a whole like song and dance tribute, and so did the James Bond franchise, which didn't even die. When David Lynch died, I was absolutely shocked, and I did start doing a video about his career and kind of like a retrospective, but I never finished it because I was kind of conflicted about his later movies and like his later career. So leave a comment if you actually give a damn about seeing me do that David Lynch retrospective, as currently I have no plans to ever finish that. Best documentary was apparently No Other Land, a film that's apparently banned in America because it seeks a pro-peace Israel-Palestine coexistence policy. And speaking of banned-nominated movies I also haven't been able to see was The Apprentice. The Apprentice was only in theaters for like 3 days here, and then it vanished instantly, and I don't want to pay for it on streaming, but yeah, I care enough to see it, but I also, Trump is Trump. Moving on to other blood-sucking monsters covered in plague. I also didn't feel like reviewing Nosferatu because it was very, very sexually disgusting, but it was probably one of the craziest, sickest, and grossest horror movies of the year, and it was really awesome, and if you like horror movies, you should definitely see it. Moving on, I reviewed Wicked, but it was kind of funny how like obsessed the night was with The Wizard of Oz. Like we started off with a tribute from Ariana Grande covering the Rainbow Song from the original Wizard of Oz. Then we got this musical tribute to Wicked. And then Queen Latifah also did a musical tribute to The Wiz. So they had like musical tributes to almost every popular version of the Wizard of Oz, or at least the 3 biggest ones. Moving on to the end of the night, I haven't seen Conclave, Brutalist, or Complete Unknown. I probably won't ever see Conclave. It's too religious and that's not my kind of thing. I might give The Brutalist a chance. I actually almost saw it one night, but when I heard it was like 4 hours long, I walked out of the theater. I expect I'll eventually see the Bob Dylan movie, although I've heard it's very, very weird. I did see some people rightfully mad that The Brutalist supposedly cheated using AI when, Timothée Chalamet had to learn to play a guitar. And then Adrian Brody rambled on for 10 minutes, which caused Hulu to pull the plug on the broadcast, so I didn't get to see how it ended. So yeah, I think Adrian Brody made a lot of enemies tonight. So I guess you should just listen to Conan next time. Anyway, yeah, I didn't see the end of the Oscars, so I feel like I lost out on something there. But what information I know came from a variety of secondhand sources. So I'm still kind of doubting the news that Demi Moore didn't get Best Actress against this girl I've never heard of, but whatever. Not seeing the end of the event kind of ruined the night for me. I kind of hope Hulu burns in hell for fucking this up, or at least they learn something and this never happened again. Apparently Anora came out of nowhere and won the night. So I initially didn't care about this movie because it just looked like a remake of Pretty Woman with some Russian gangsters added to me, but I guess I can reconsider it since it won so hard. It's kind of ironic that it won a majority of the categories Emilia Perez was really forecasted to take until the lead actress torpedoed herself. But yeah, ultimately it's a super crazy upset because here we have a $6 million indie that beat every major blockbuster studio, every major Hollywood veteran, and so a lot of people are going to have some crazy takeaways from this. I think one of the takeaways I heard first, and is probably right but also wrong, is that Sean Baker has finally made it. He's finally going to be promoted from the indie little leagues to the blockbuster big leagues. I think that will definitely happen, but I also think you're missing the point there that in a year where everyone has really come out to hate every aspect of the established, it's kind of amazing that the best picture and the best animated picture are both these little guys completely disconnected from that infrastructure. And I think that just shows that indies were the real winners. All All right, that's everything I got to say, but what do you guys feel about the show? Did you like Conan? Did you feel like movies got outright robbed? And did you watch the show on Hulu like me and have a variety of technical problems? Because fuck Hulu. All right, that's where I'm at. Good night.